Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Integrating Investor Show. I am Seth Levine of the Integrating Investor. Thank you for joining me again today on this lovely December Friday. We have a very special show today. We are going to wrap up season one. It is very hard to believe that we've been pretty much going almost every week or so since April, and time has really flown by, and we've produced a lot of shows. And I thought it'd be good, heading into the holiday season, just kind of wrap up and take a step back and kind of reflect on everything we've covered this far and see what lessons we can glean from it. And also, give you guys a little bit of an opportunity, to the extent anyone's interested, to do a little bit of an Ask Me Anything episode. So, I'm going to monitor the chat. I'll probably get to all the questions at the end of the episode because I have some stuff I'd like to get through today. But feel free to please use that chat. Ask me any questions if you're interested, or if you're not, and I'll do my best to get to them. But I'll pay some special attention to that today. As always, please like and share the show. Really helps. As always, just hit that little like button there right now, and this way you don't have to do it later, or then you unlike it later, or thumbs down it if you're not into it. But hey, you do it now, it's done. Also follow me on Twitter and Instagram to a lesser extent, and check out the website. That's always the best place to follow what I am up to. You subscribe there, you'll get my monthly emails. Got another one coming out on Monday. And of course, please use that super chat function, because that is always a help. And if you always have any questions or topics or anything else, feedback in general, I guess you could always email me at info@integratinginvestor.com. This is info@integratinginvestor.com. Already see the chat active. Thank you so much, everyone. Jonathan, my gosh, thank you for that giant donation. That is very generous. What is your top under the radar idea for 2022? I need to stay away from investment advice, but we can talk on the side as I'll tell you kind of what I'm thinking. But just because you donate some dollars, I'm thinking less and less about kind of specific positions and more from a strategy perspective. So what I've really been thinking about lately is how to integrate my investment ideas. And I've toyed in the past. I wrote an article on it. I don't think I've mentioned it on this show, but I have mentioned it, I think, on the Daily Objective with you, Jonathan, about parsing my ideas into very specific theses, and specifically those that are value components. So a real fundamental idea that I think is going to play out in the future, and more of a momentum strategy. So what is the momentum? What are people buying and selling? And I've been able to kind of think about my investment in those two ways. So to put it in your parlance, perhaps in the context of trend, I think about what are some trends that are going to persist, and what are some trends that are going to reverse. So that's sort of my under the radar idea is kind of about how to think about investing, not necessarily what to invest in. But yeah, we can talk later for sure. MA, thank you. Jeff, thank you. Apollo Zeus, I thought this said MMA for a second there. Sai, yeah, I don't blame you. There was some good MMA on this morning. My time. If you are MMA fans out there, as I have become over the last couple of years, but again, we can get back to that at the end for sure. So moving right along, as you all know, we throw up this disclaimer again, Jonathan. We are not giving investment advice here, and these are just personal comments. I'm not recommending anyone buy or sell any investment product or service, nor should you even listen to me at all when it comes to your own investing. Information purposes only. Do your own work. Thank you, regulators. So, looking back on season one, it's really remarkable to me how much ground we covered this season. We only covered about, a half dozen or so really distinct topics. But within those topics, I mean, there were a lot of concepts and a lot of applications that we really got to dig into. It's really interesting to me, kind of how and why this all came up. And the reason why, at least why I dug into these topics just for my own interest, was I pretty much had to throw out a lot of the assumed investment knowledge that I had, and just started with a complete, kind of a clean slate, or at least as clean as a cleaner slate is maybe more accurate. I did this for a pretty specific reason, and it's because I've come to consider investing in an is-ought perspective, right? So what is will dictate what we ought to do from an investing perspective. In fact, we even started off the show completely defining something that seems so easy, right? We started the show defining investing. I introduced this investing equation where we take our existing capital, we commit the capital through what I've called the act of selection, which is investing. Time elapses, and then we have an ending capital, and hopefully we made money if we've invested successfully. So investing really is this act of selection, and implicit in that act of selection, it's really a philosophical and intellectual exercise. It requires the integration of what I would call metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, right? We apply epistemology, which is how we think, so a method for thinking, towards metaphysics, or, in a more narrower sense, what is going on in the markets, what something is in reality. And then through ethics, right, our action, we commit our capital. And that is, through the selection process. So investing really is kind of this very deeply philosophical and intellectual process. And the better we know what something is, right, the better we know what that metaphysical component is through the use of epistemology, the better we can speculate on what we ought to do with our capital, right? The ethical, the action. And this is why I spend so much time on just trying to understand kind of what things are in the investment world, because they can be pretty confusing or tricky. But when it comes to investing, things aren't always what we think. And this is because investing is very abstract, right? It's very removed from the percepts upon which financial concepts ultimately rest, right? When we think about how we form concepts and how we and expand our understanding of the world, it is a highly conceptual chain. We start with percepts, what we see, and then through the use of epistemology, we build relationships between percepts to create concepts, and then we look at concepts to create higher and higher and higher level concepts. And investing is very abstract. So there's a long conceptual chain there where things can go wrong. And what I've really discovered through the process of writing and through the process of the show is that I've had to rethink many foundational investing topics. I've literally started from the beginning with things like inflation, money, gold, cryptocurrencies, central banks, shadow banks, kind of market concentration, political and economic power, trend, valuation, all these sort of types of ideas and themes. I mean, they popped up time and time again in numerous shows and in all kind of different ways. And as I've gone through, the show, and really the exercise of creating the show and creating my content, I've become a better investor because I've made my actions more deliberate. My thinking is a lot clearer these days, at least from an investment perspective. And it's because I've uncovered a lot of conceptual mistakes that I kind of subconsciously had formed. Right? Take, for example, the last show that we did, right? Gold's role in investment portfolios. I thought gold was really a good inflation hedge. But again, I had to rethink my whole view of inflation to really understand that, right? And also how the Fed impacts investment markets. I started writing a number of years ago with one idea of how the Fed impacts markets. And on the series on money, I've, kind of hinted at, or, hopefully I explained how I have a whole different view of how the Fed impacts investment markets these days. I see it from a carry trade perspective, not necessarily, in a leverage perspective, not necessarily from a market kind of controlling perspective. And because I've sort of gone through and cleared up some of my thinking, I find that I'm able to learn from my mistakes a little bit better because I have a little bit more intellectual integrity. Because again, like investing is this act of selection. It is an intellectual exercise. And because of that, it requires a lot of introspection to check, you have to check yourself to see if you're actually thinking clearly and effectively. And in cleaning up my own thinking, I've also seen how prevalent kind of sloppy thinking is in like the market writ large, right? And with a lot of people with whom like I actually, respect. And that's because there's a lot of emotionalism in today's markets, and that misleads people. I mean, and just think about the Fed, right? Like people think the Fed is harmful, and the Fed, manipulates markets and manipulates inflation. And quite honestly, I just don't see it. I actually think central banks are harmful institutions, but for a completely different way, for example. We've actually, and again, like we even had to think about investing, right? What is investing? I found that investing isn't necessarily what I thought it was, right? Is it valuation? Is investing all about valuation? That was sort of how I was sort of brought up in the industry. And what I've learned is like, no, investing is not about valuation. Valuation may be a tool, but investing is about making money from money. And that's really about it. Another example, what is Bitcoin, right? I had sort of I was looking at Bitcoin pretty early on in my days, and I had all these abstractions for Bitcoin, right? Is it the cure for all the L's in the financial markets and the financial system? Does Bitcoin cure everything? Does it fix everything, I should say? Or is Bitcoin so much more, right? Is it a vote for freedom? Is it a vote against the status quo? Is it a vote for yourself amid a world of uncertainty? But ultimately, right, you can get wrapped up in these slogans and in these, in a lot of that emotionalism, but that's not what the facts are, right? What is Bitcoin, for example? No, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Right. It is a payment platform that disintermediates the intermediaries in the payment platform financial service world. Right. This is the white paper. This is from Satoshi Nakamoto. This is what the inventor said it is. So everything else is really just a faulty abstraction of what Bitcoin is, for example. Another big one that I find is inflation, right? And I did a bunch of shows on inflation. I did a bunch of shows on money. But here's a very popular belief from Milton Friedman, maybe the most popular inflation statement ever. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. But is it, right? Is it really something that can only be produced by central banks? Because if you think about it, if it can only be produced by central banks, there's an implication there that only central banks can remove inflation. And that's something that no one talks about at all. Is inflation this monetary phenomenon, or maybe has its meaning changed over the years? As von Mises, one of my favorite economists, observes that what many people call inflation or deflation is no longer a great increase or decrease in the supply of money, but generally just kind of supply and demand dynamics in the economy. So, inflation, again, like, what about this, right? If we look at the historical use of inflation, there had this dual meaning, right? There's this general price, this general rise in prices. But is it really, when you look at inflation, you just look at it, right? You observe it. You see that one of these dual concepts that Carl Menger talked about in 1923 of the inner value of money, right? That's sort of the intrinsic measuring stick, for lack of a better word. It means something completely different today. What once meant the debasement of a monetary standard, which is how a lot of people like to use it today, or still use it, I should say, it doesn't mean that anymore. It really just means price increases, and specifically some kind of growth in CPI or some other kind of comparable metrics. Now, these aren't my definition of inflation, as some people really want to believe. Some people who've seen this really want to believe I'm making this stuff up. This is literally how inflation is defined and used in the market today. And you don't have to take my word for it. You just observe, right? Go out and observe, type it in, look up the definition of inflation. Talk, if you're in investment markets, talk to people. You don't need to be, it is objective that this is how inflation is used today. Inflation's modern definition is simply different. So we have to adapt our thinking to this. And this is why I spent so much time revisiting the concept of money, right? Something so simple. Money sits at the base of investing, right? Again, investing is making money from money. So in order to make money from money, we have to first understand what money is, what it is, where it came from, and how we can make more of it. And as my friend John notes, money unearths the stupid like nothing else. So if we're going to be stupid about money, we're going to be stupid about a whole lot of things that relate to money, like economic policy and investing. And quite honestly, I showed how diverse people's views of money are on one of, in our money episodes. There are some people who think money is a medium of exchange. Some people consider it a store of value. There's people who think it's a unit of account. There's a school of thought that thinks that money is just paper that the government prints. Others think money is some kind of commodity. Gold is money. Money is debt. They're the same thing. Money can only be produced by central banks, or money can only be produced by private sector banks and private sector companies. All of these views exist in the market today, and they're conflicting. So how do we can see why people have a lot of diverse views in the world, because people start with a lot of diverse views of money. And we can see how our views of money affect lots of other views relating to investing. So also, I thought we brought some pretty interesting guests on the show this season. Each one who I brought on, I thought had a very different approach to investing. It kind of saw the world in a very different way, but there were a lot of commonalities. Or we had John Tamny on, who had a political perspective. Tony Greer was on next, and he is a little bit more of a commodities-based trading mentality. Hugh Henry came on, who takes a very intellectual risk management and also a macro kind of perspective. Daniel Want came on the show, and he brought this systems approach to thinking about markets, again, in a very macro and a very intellectual perspective. Dr. Wes Gray came on. He's a very quantitative investor, and he brought a different perspective too. And he introduced these ideas of momentum and value that have heavily influenced me. And then lastly, we had Corey Hoffstein, who took a completely different, almost different view than anyone else, and was really focused on risk management. Although all elements, I shouldn't say that, pretty much all of them had that as well. So all these different investors are successful. They're all very smart and intellectual, but they're all very different. But there were some commonalities. And that's what really struck me. The first was that they were very interested in acting in accordance with the data, and were willing to kind of change their mind and display just really an immense amount of mental flexibility when things didn't line up as they thought. So they evolved their thinking kind of as warranted by the facts, and really tried to avoid acting on dogma or faith. And it seems very obvious or easy, but those are very hard things to do in investing. They were all also incredibly creative and took their ideas very seriously. So really, when I look at the guests who we brought on the show, I mean, I saw courage, intellectual integrity, and a fidelity to the truth. And really, no one followed kind of an investment script per se, but really they, kind of applied their own is-ought perspective to the show, right? They were after what is going on in the investment markets so they could figure out what they ought to do from an investing perspective. Also had two other guests on the show. I had Guy Pecho, if you guys will remember. He came on to give an analysis of the Fed. He's a macro investor, so he gave us an interesting glimpse into his kind of process. And Jim Brown, of course, came on, and he kind of took over the show for a couple weeks, which was kind of nice for me. And he shared his views on money and banking. And I found Jim's shows really interesting too, because there are a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences in our views of money. And that's always interesting to see, because it's similarities and differences that really are the building blocks of knowledge. And a little bit of a spoiler alert here, if in the new year, I think we're going to be seeing a little bit more of Jim on this channel. So stay tuned there. And of course, kind of the last couple of shows that I've done, I did one on China and gold. Those were kind of applications of some of the principles that we talked about on the show to current events. Right, with China, we viewed kind of the sell-off in its investment markets through the lens of centralization. Right, so we really saw why, or at least in my opinion, saw why kind of its current political path kind of is bad for investment markets. Right, because centralization, in my view, kind of helps concentrate risk, and risk is it's not a good thing for economic growth or investing. And on gold, again, we applied all of kind of the topics of inflation and money to gold. And, we saw that gold doesn't really hedge inflation well anymore today. And I posited because those are due to definition changes for both money and inflation. And it's all very clear in the data and that's the key, if you want to see it. Because again, gold, inflation, very emotional topics. But we could also use the data to see how gold can be used from an investing perspective. We saw its portfolio effects and its return effects as studied by a few other people. So it's been it's been a long ride, and maybe with that, we should probably check over the chat. You guys have been pretty active here. Thank you so much. See if I can any questions come up. Again, thank you, Jeff, MA, Jonathan, for your super chat donation. A little bit. What are my top 3 favorite essays or reads? Man, what are my top 3 essays or reads, Jonathan? The top one overall is very easy. That is Philosophy Who Needs It by Ayn Rand. If you've not read Philosophy Who Needs It, it is a talk that Ayn Rand gave to the West Point graduating class of West Point, I think in the 70s. But for me, it's what kicked off my entire journey into my own, into objectivism, into my investing, into just really my own psychology. It was super fascinating. But that is interesting. I have any questions on that, but I would recommend almost everyone reading it. And again, was given to the graduating class of West Point. So this isn't a philosophy talk, but the power of the talk and just the identification of why you need to know philosophy and how it can help your life was really touching. What are another kind of essays or read? What are the top 3 things? Man, I'll go for another one. Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. That's one of my favorite investment reads. I've read that a couple times. That's a great one. I'm pretty sure you have read that one, Jonathan. Let me see if I can get something else from a different perspective. What if I read that I've really enjoyed? I read Super Forecasters. That's a pretty good one. I wrote an article on that. That is by someone help me out here. It's by Kahneman. No, it's not by Kahneman. Maybe it's anyway. Super Forecasters. That's another good one. Those are the top 3 that come to my mind in sort of psychology, philosophy, and investing, which are really the foundations of of investing. But really, top read ever. I mean, is hands down the Fountainhead. Not even close. But so let's see what else we got here. Sorry, just reading through the chat. There is a lot. Thank you guys for being so active today. It's nice to see everyone here. I was expecting some insider trading, some tips, some trading stuff. Yeah, I'm sorry, no investment advice here. And going back to Reminiscence of a Stock Operator, there's a great quote in there about investing, about trading on tips. Tips from other people, and really how it makes you you lose your independence as an investor when you trade on tips, because you rely on someone to get you into a position. That means you have to rely on someone to get you out of a position. And I read that line, and that was really interesting. So never trade on tips, because you lose your independence. To put it in parlance of Ayn Rand, you become an investing second-hander, right? And that is not a good place to be. Have you seen Rogue Trader? No, I've not seen Rogue Trader. Lifeboat by Hitchcock. I've not seen Lifeboat by Hitchcock. I don't know if you're talking to me or not, but I hope so. Let's see, Jeff. Thank you right here. Did you see your own retweet about the fellow who's been looking for the hard drive he threw away a decade ago? On his Bitcoin. Yes, I have actually seen that episode. I've seen other, I don't know if I heard the Yaron episode. So what Jeff is what Jeff is referencing is there is someone who had mined Bitcoin a long time ago on an old hard drive, and he threw it away. I threw it in the dumpster, and now he is, it went into the local trash heap, and it has a lot of Bitcoin on it, and it is worth a lot of money. So he is after it, trying to like literally digging through the garbage to try and find it. And he says, how would you avoid this pitfall? Well, that's a really interesting risk management perspective. I mean, I think Bitcoin is somewhat unique along those lines because how do you avoid that pitfall, right? There is no counterparty. So is the lesson there, store your money with a trusted custodian, which is pretty interesting if you think about it. Bitcoin is supposedly a trustless system, and is the answer store it with someone who you trust, so this can't happen. You have some sort of fail-safe to access it. It's interesting to think about. I don't know how you would avoid that. There aren't too many things in life. It's kind of like a treasure map. You bury your treasure, and then you lose the map. The way to prevent against that is to pay someone to safeguard that information for you. Thesi, I'm not sure. I hope I'm not butchering. Do I think people rely too much on what a good investment is for the friends, or should we go for more individual gut instinct? That is a really great question. I do think there's a little bit too much of both in the markets today, and that is not a cop-out. Because investing, I think there's a little bit of I think people don't understand how, like, the purpose for investing. Now, investing makes money for money, but makes money from money. But why are you doing that? And that why is very personal. Are you saving for retirement? Are you just trying to, like, I don't know, get rich quick and you don't care about that money, right? How does that money fit into your life? How does the money you've saved, right, the capital that you're going to contribute, relate to your life? And what do you want it to do for you in the future? So that is a very personal decision. And because that is your purpose, how you act, right, that is in a sense, what you ought to do really is going to depend on how you define that. So I was talking to a friend very recently, and he asked me the same thing. He's like, hey, I have some extra money. What should I do with it? I'm like, well, what does that mean to you? And he's like, yeah, I don't really need it. He's thankfully in a very good position. He's like, like everything is squared away. This is kind of extra. I'm like, well, then you have a lot of options. Is there anything you're interested in, for example? And we were talking, and it turns out that he, may be able to kind of use his extra money in a way that towards one of his interests. So it could be, for example, investing in venture capital in a biotech space, for example. Maybe that's something he's really interested in. Maybe he's interested in cryptocurrency, and it's worthwhile to use that money, not necessarily for entertainment, but to help invest in the world that you want. Think about how this relates to the billionaire space race that we have going on right now between Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos. All three of them are billionaires, right? You could argue they probably don't need any more money to achieve any of their goals. Yet they are taking money that's left over, and they want to go to space, right? That is a dream of theirs. They are taking this money that they have, this capital that they have, to try and bring forth a future that they wish they had. And to me, that is just beautiful and says it all there. So what is a good investment for you is not necessarily going to be a good investment for someone else. So it should be more individual, but individual from a fulfilling a purpose perspective, from purpose from a strategy perspective, and then what individual investments you select to fulfill that purpose. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap. So let's see. Don't throw out your hard drive. Yes, that is the answer to Jeff's question, I guess. Let's trying to get through here. Is Richard Branson really in the running for space? I believe you're asking, is Richard Branson really in the running for space? I mean, I think so. I mean, he went into technically outer space, and he's definitely doing a lot of research in that field. So I think it's fantastic. All right. So thank you everyone for all that. So, thank you for all the chats. I mean, I hope I answered some of them. Probably could do a better job, but maybe we'll do a better job in season 2. But really, I just want to express my gratitude for everyone for watching season 1 here. It was a super fun journey for me. It was a lot of work. I hope you guys all enjoyed it too. Thank you for all the super chats. MA again with another super chat. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Jeff. You guys have been big supporters of the show. Thank you, everyone else who've supported the various shows, who I'm forgetting. I really appreciate the support. Hit the like button again. I appreciate all those likes. Feel free, please stay in touch. You could reach out to me out there in any of those places. Sign up for the monthly emails. That's probably the best way. Again, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. Would love, reach out if you have any questions or comments. Reach out just to say hi. I'd love to hear from everyone. As a teaser, I don't know how much of this I can say or not, but I think Jim Brown is going to be back with the show to kind of pick up the reins here on an investing perspective, coming in the new year. So that should be great. And as always, have a great holiday season, everyone. This is for me one of the best times of the year. You get to really kind of celebrate and enjoy the holidays, between Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. I mean, it's the holy trinity it's the holy trinity of holidays, productiveness, enjoyment of that productiveness, and, looking forward to a new year of getting better. So with that, sign off season 1. Everyone have a great holiday, and I'll see you for season 2. Take care.